I'm Artistic Gamer 7, and welcome back to some more Sims 4 speed builds, house builds, build. So this is part 2 of the Overlook mansion. If you missed part 1, it is linked down in the description below. I will also be adding part 3 once it goes live, so that, if you're catching this after part 3 is already up, you can just easily scroll down and click part 3, because sometimes the autoplay list does not go in order of how videos were uploaded or how they are even put in the playlist. But, anyway, that's just a different point. But anyway, we're going to continue on building this mansion. So as I had mentioned in part 1, this is going to be finishing up decorating the outside of the place here. So I'm doing a lot of landscaping, a lot of flowers. The flowers that you are seeing me work on right now, that are in this corner, are almost pointless because I eventually add the pond thing from Get Famous that you could put in what else can you put in there? It's sharks, piranhas, and I feel like there was something else. But I can't quite remember off the top of my head what it was. But I ended up adding it there because I tried adding it to the back of the house at one point, but it just didn't look fully right, and I wasn't 100% feeling it in the back, and I decided I actually liked it up here in the corner. I technically leave all that plant work behind. I do slightly rearrange some of the stuff, but I do ultimately put it up there, and technically a lot of the flowers get covered up to the point that it doesn't matter if they were there or not. They don't get seen. Some of them still get seen with the way I put it there, but still, it was almost no point of me doing it. And I also did add ivy, at least on part of that fence. That's it's the fence, but it's sort of been made like a wall or a barrier for that particular deck, so that you can sort of still see through it, but you sort of can't. But then I added ivy, so it's a little bit more private back there, but still has that sort of open feel to it, to even into the front, because of the type of fence that is. And I will say, I like putting ivy on buildings, and I like trying to do it, but sometimes I feel I'll have a build here and there where I try to put the ivy on it, where I'm like, okay, this works. But the majority of the time, when I try to put ivy on builds, it just doesn't work, at least in my opinion. It just looks weird, and it not totally the look I was going for, or cutesy, or adorable, or fantasy vibe. It doesn't fit any of those cool things to have, vibes that you sort of want to have if you're putting ivy on places. And I see so many people put ivies on builds that it just looks really nice when they put it on there, but I struggle to put the ivy on the houses and make it actually look natural in a way and look good, because I feel like a lot of the ivy that we have in the game to some degree looks almost too structured, too blocky. So I feel like if there was some that was patchy and shaped a little bit oddly, so that we can use those every once in a while, plus the square, more block ones. The black ones could be used to fill, but then once you start getting towards the top and you don't want it as filled and as structured, you could start using those. But that's the reason why, to me, it either starts looking way, way too thick for ivy to make sense, or it just doesn't look right in general. It looks too uniform for the way ivy technically grows. So sometimes it somehow does turn out okay, and then other times it's just nah. Nah. I do know that they do have some ivy stuff in live edit mode, but the way that those are structured, you have to have a building that it fits for. Not all building shapes are going to easily be able to use those in every spot, or in the spot that you want to the ivy in. But that is a nice option. I'm at least glad that is there, so it is something that, if the chance arises that I can use it, it's there. But otherwise, I wish there was a little bit more not so structured ivy pieces to actually use on the wall. And as you can see, I am doing the, adding the objects and doing the, finishing stuff for the outside, and eventually I will get into the inside. I do include the layout of the inside, so me building the layout, but I take out placing all the ceiling lights and placing the wallpaper and flooring. The lights is really boring, and I partially go and put them through before I put the wallpaper and stuff on, so that I could see what that wallpaper and flooring looks like together with the lighting that I'm going to be putting in the room. So I sort of have at least somewhat of an idea of what, like, sort of style or look I'm going for that room, and I pick out the light from there, and then I start going and picking out the wallpapers. But I like having some light in the room so that I can actually tell what it's supposed to look like. But yeah, so it's sort of boring to watch me just place literally all these lights. And either I like taking out the wallpaper section or the me building the wall section, just because it would make the videos a lot longer if I kept them both in, and it's almost like seeing the same thing over twice, just done a little bit differently. So I left in, like, making the layout, and plus you get to see the wallpaper and the flooring as I'm decorating the room, so I wasn't as concerned with that, so I take that out. So as you can see, with the back, I still am trying to stick with the red. I've added some red flowers, even around, like, the little gazebo thing. And I think I mentioned it in part 1. I have that little gazebo thing almost planned as, like, an event thing. So, like, maybe family members or extended family sometimes might actually ask to use, if they're okay if they use their house as, like, a place to have events at and things like that. Or, like, at least the close members of the family to have events and things at, and it's sort of set up more for a wedding, partially because that was easily the vibe that it sort of was going, like, looked like it would go for, since it was white already, but easily you could probably change that around if you needed to for any, like, party space or whatever, but it is more sort of geared towards a wedding right now. I don't have seating inside of the gazebo for, like, them to actually watch the wedding. That's because I didn't want the gazebo to look too chaotic for, like, the screenshots and stuff like that. But easily, if you do want to download this build, you can easily just, like, add chairs and stuff in there and then remove them if they're sort of annoying and you want to use that as a dance floor. Because that's why I sort of put the music thing in there, is that it could be a dance space as well. So if I was to ever use it for that purpose, like, I had a family here and, like, someone in their family was getting married and they wanted to use this house as the location, that's what I'd probably do, is add the chairs for when they're getting married and then remove them afterwards so that they can sort of dance and play around and all that stuff in the gazebo as well. I do really want to use this house. Sometimes when I'm building houses, I actually already sort of know an actual sim that I have in my actual, like, main save, as I call it, that I would like to live in this in the house that I'm building. But I don't always have that thought process going into these builds. This was one of them that was not. I did sort of make up a family sort of in my head as I was doing this. Like, I had, like, an idea of personalities and stuff like that. Like, the husband is more business oriented, but he also does a lot of work around the house. Like, he's not afraid to get messed up and things like that by fixing the fridge or doing woodwork or something like that. Like, he's okay with doing that stuff, but he is a businessman. He's actually, like, a well-off businessman. The wife was, like, really into planting. She made floral arrangements. In my head, she sort of made arrangements and stuff for, like, big party events and stuff like that, and that's sort of how she's got well known. But she's really big into plants, so I do include a lot of plant stuff through it, and they both really sort of like the color red, so that's why the color red is, like, a theme throughout this house. And then there is the butler or live-in maid's quarters, and then there's 4 kids, and they all have sort of a personality and more of a favorite color and everything like that. So I did sort of make up a family for this house without actually making the family for this house. But yeah, so I sort of had, like, a feel going into it, like, a personality behind the house, basically. That's what I'm getting at. But as you can see on the outside area, there is a place for kids and toddlers to play. I know that a lot of people make fun of the ball pit. I personally don't think the ball pit looks too bad anymore. Plus, like, Sims has never been a 100% realistic game, and that is fine. I don't think any video game should be 100% realistic. Where I would prefer Sims to be realistic is in some of the places where they're not realistic now, which is how Sims sort of act. The personality-wise, I want Sims to react to their partners cheating on them and actually be affected by it for, like, weeks or so. Like, you know, stuff like that kids reacting to the way their parents act around each other and all this different stuff, like stuff like that. That is like more the realistic side that I would like put into Sims, but it seems like Sims is missing right now. But when it comes to a few other elements here and there, I can bypass those, and I like some unrealistic elements too, like the vampires and the spellcasters. I like them being put in there as an unrealistic element. But I've said that several times before. I like realism mixed with unrealistic. I don't want it to be fully unrealistic, and I don't want it to be fully realistic. So I like there to be a blend of the two. But it feels like some of the elements of unrealistic that I would like are still missing, and some of the real elements of realistic I would like are still missing. So it's like I'm getting both of them, but not to the best that they could be with Sims. But yeah, anyway, so yeah, I'm not too bothered by the ball pit. I still, like, yeah, when they first had it come out, it did look stupid, but at the same time, out of all the things that were missing in our game, or things that I would prefer to be in our game, that is one of the least things I'm worried about right now, is whether or not the ball pit looks 100% realistic, or, like, nice. There's a lot of other things I would rather them focus on first, but, you know, whatever. Anyway. Plus, I think it actually looks sort of adorable with how the toddlers at least act in the ball pit, so I can look over the ball pit not looking great. But now that they did fix it slightly, I don't think it really looks that bad. So yes, I used the ball pit. I think it's sort of adorable with how the toddlers act in it. So plus, I wanted there to be stuff for the toddlers to do as well as the kids to do. For anyone who is visiting this, friends and family that have toddlers, they also have a toddler room, so there's a toddler in the house. So I wanted there to be stuff for both. And the one play set thing for the toddler is huge. I didn't want to incorporate that, so I gave 2 things for the bigger kids and 2 things for the toddlers. But I didn't want to use, like, the big playgrounds for both of them, because they take up so much space. So, yeah. But yeah, there is an outside dining area sort of there on the porch that overlooks where the kids are playing, as well as the pool area. There's the hot tub. There's sort of one of the work areas for her plants and things like that. She's actually got 2. One is on the first floor, which is the one that we were just on, the balcony outside, and then the second floor, which you'll see why there's also one included there after you see how I decorate one of the rooms up there. And I think in total, after everything was done, I had 6 bedrooms technically and 9 bathrooms, but one of the bathrooms is the master bath. And considering there is technically supposed to be, like, in my vision of this family, there is 4 kids, then there is also the live-in maid or butler also being there, as well as I was thinking of this being a entertained or event space for family and friends of theirs. So I wanted there to be enough bathrooms so that if they had a lot of people over, everyone could get to a bathroom. Though the majority of the bathrooms are not on the first floor. They're on the second and third floor, which is probably a mistake on my part. But there's only like 1 bathroom on the first floor. But I ended up designing the first floor in such a way that I couldn't fit other bathrooms really, so, oh well. Now, you should have just seen me with the third floor, and that I had a little problem. It was acting like there basically wasn't a roof, or like part of the roof was missing, or not the whole section was uncovered, so it was really well lit up there, and when I put the stairs from the second floor to the third floor, it lit the room down in the second floor that the stairs were, again, acting like there is no roofs covering the third floor, but there was complete roofs covering the third floor. So I tried building a fence all the way around, like one of the small fences, all the way around underneath the roof, to where it wouldn't show through the roof, but it would consider it as a room in a way. But it still didn't work. It seemed like it started to. Then I realized that it was actually one of the roofs on the second floor, on part of the house that has roofing on the second floor part, and where it went up a little bit higher and it actually went so far over the line that was started the third floor, it was somehow making it think that it wasn't a floor that was covered, which is sort of weird and annoying. And I was like, okay, well then I'm gonna have to lower this roof. So I lowered it a little bit and it fixed it, but I didn't really like the roof being lowered that much because I liked how it looked before, because, you know, different roof heights somehow, like, they don't mesh up together if you don't have them at certain heights when you have multiple roofs that cover the whole house. And that's what was happening. Like, they wasn't lining up right and it didn't look quite as right, but I had realized, like, I'd come to the realization as I was deleting the fence, when the fence wasn't all the way connected, there was at one point that it still considered the third floor being covered by a roof. All I had to do was put a fence right across the area where that roof was. So the wall that roof was attaching to, putting a fence of any size fixed that issue for whatever reason. So if you ever have that, check some of the roofs that are maybe on the lower floor and see if they're going up above that line that starts the new floor, and put a fence across that and see if it does anything for you. It's really sort of strange, and especially since you're technically putting a fence above. So, like, the roof was on the second floor. I put the fence on top of the wall for the third floor. So it was really strange, but that fixed it. So that's something maybe if you're building and you have an issue with, you can try it yourself to see if that might help. But it was a really sort of strange fix, but it worked. So I was able to keep the roof the height that I wanted to and still get the third floor being considered having roofing cover the whole entire thing, even though it was 100% roofed covered. But yeah, anyway, so now we are on the inside of the house. So now you get to see, like, the wallpaper that's been added onto it and things like that. I have already worked on the entryway there. And we have the dining room here, which, again, I am using a lot of darker colors, of darker woods for the most part. I do break it up by bringing in some lighter colors here and there with, like, some of the furniture pieces or the rugs or, like, certain accents and stuff like that. So I don't do, like, 100% just dark colors. I just have it as the overwhelmingly majority of the stuff tend to lean towards a darker tone. Except for some rooms, like the kitchen is actually pretty bright. I think that's also because there's the huge, gigantic windows into the kitchen. So with the color wallpaper, well, the wall/tiling that I chose and the tiles on the floor, it's very bright in there, even though I do use some darker elements still in the kitchen as well. But yeah, with the dining room here, I did put two tables together because, again, I'm thinking of this as, like, it is a celebrity home. Even when celebrities aren't doing big events, a lot of times they still invite quite a few people over for, like, smaller events even. So I wanted there to be enough room for entertainment space. So I tried to keep that in mind throughout this whole entire build. So yeah, there's only, like, 6 or 7 Sims in this household, and a regular table can sit up to, like, 8. So a regular table on its own can fit as many Sims as you're allowed in your household. But because I'm thinking of an entertainment basis and other Sims coming to visit and coming to parties and stuff here, I did put the two tables together to make it look like one big table and put more chairs around it so that more Sims could sit there and stuff and be, like, together. Now, nextly, I am working on the kitchen, obviously. You should be seeing it by now. I did want to make sure that the kitchen was attached to both the dining area outside and the dining area inside. So I wanted it to be like a center point in between the two so that if the family decided to eat outside, it was very close to getting to the outside. And if they decided to go and eat inside, it was also still very close to the inside section. Now, I haven't play tested this house. I tend to not play test it too often. I usually, if I play test it, it's because there is one particular area or something that I've done that I'm very questionable about if a sim could get around it. But usually I'm trying to keep in mind, because some people make like these grandiose builds and they're amazing and beautiful, and I still love seeing them and I still love watching them built. But I'll admit, there's a part of me that's like, I don't know if that would actually, like, you could actually play that. Like, your sim could fully, freely walk around that and use every part of the build. Like, I don't know if that is possible. And I personally like to try to build builds, except for in rare circumstances, but for the most part, I want to try to use builds that I know that people are potentially going to use, or that I am for sure they're going to use. So I do try to keep in mind as I'm building it, like, trying to remember from my experience of building for a while now in The Sims 4, and then also playing in a lot of my houses that I've built, because even though I may not play test them before I do the voiceover, I have actually been using a lot of my builds that I've built on this channel. I've been slowly moving them into my main save and actually using them for my own families. So keeping that in mind, I'm sort of keep that in the back of my head, what Sims limitations are, where they can move around. So I try to do my best while building it to have an idea of where how the Sims are going to fit in the space and how they're going to be able to use things. And that if for some reason, like, let's say, like, I think I'm in the study here now. Let's say one of those bookcases didn't work. Well, there's still a bookcase over there that will work. So that even though, yeah, maybe these bookcases are going to be off limits because the way they built, there's a bookcase in the same room that won't be. So I always try to make sure that the house is as functioning as possible. Because I do want these to get use out of them. I don't want them to just be like, built, look at the pretty build I've done. Here you go, that's it. And it sits there. Obviously, some of the builds that are more extravagant and maybe Sims can't necessarily fully use them to extent can be used for, like, if you're a Simmer who likes taking screenshots or doing, like, a photography-like thing in the Sims. They're good for those things, but to actually play in them, some builds are not made to fully play or go into gameplay mode, which is still, again, perfectly fine. I've seen a lot of those type of builds, and I love seeing them, and I'm astonished and amazed. Like, how in the world did they do this? They are extremely talented people. I could not do that, but also, in some ways, I don't want to do that, just because I want to be able to get use out of my builds, if possible. Now, again, I'm going to have the few circumstances where I'm probably not. For instance, my haunted builds that I did for last month, I'm never going to use St. Albans for almost anything, probably, unless I do, like, a spooky cast series at some point, so I use it for backdrops and screenshots and stuff or something like that. But other than that, I don't know if I would ever use St. Albans ever again, but it had a special reasoning to why I built it, so I don't mind doing it every once in a while, but the majority of my builds I try to make playable. But now, back to the actual build. The fact that the kitchen is already done and gone. So yeah, the kitchen is pretty bright, as you can see. There is still quite a bit of dark. I use really dark cabinets and things like that. Still keeping with my red in every single room. Again, I feel like I forgot the master bathroom. I think I didn't have something red in there, because I can't think of it off the top of my head, and it really annoys me. But the study has a little bit of red in it. I did like that. I did like this piece of, I don't even know what, they're just squares, and then I use little pegs that are meant to be like hanging for robes from spa day to make like an art piece on the wall. So that wall wasn't just plain. But yeah, it's a study there, and beside the study, which you have to walk through it to get to the study, is my formal living room, which I had mentioned in part 1, that I basically made this room because for a while now I've had the urge to put a piano in a build. I don't even fully know why. Part of it popped up because when I was building, like, I'd already sort of had the urge there, because every time, like, I go to, like, decorate things or add, like, activities and hobbies in a build, I look at the pianos, but the pianos are so huge, so I back out of it. I don't put them in. That urge was reinstated when I built the Lizzie Borden house. Oddly enough, talking about my haunted builds, they had a piano up against the wall that's one of those, like, square rectangular type pianos, so it sits very flat against the wall, very close to the wall. It doesn't have that big, extravagant shape to it, and doesn't take up a huge thing in the room. As a kid, there used to be one of those in my house. There's still one in my grandparents' house. It's a little bit bigger than the one that was in my house, though. It's like a huge, taller thing versus the one that was in my house. It wasn't very tall and it wasn't very big, but it was a piano. It sat in a hallway. It was small enough that it was in a hallway and you still had room to walk by through the hallway. Now, if you needed to actually sit at this piano, once someone was sitting at the piano, there was no way to fully get by them unless you were, like, very tiny. Little kid me could, because I was very tiny, I was very stick, I looked like I literally could get blown away through the wind. But I could fit through if someone was sitting at the piano. But, when no one was there, you could get by it. I want that type of piano in Sims. Just because, I don't know, I think it's partially because of my childhood. Like, I remember a piano from my childhood, so I'm like, I want a piano in The Sims like that. But also, sometimes you want to have different activities and skills for your Sims, and you don't want to give them the same activities and skill stuff that you've been giving every single Sim family. But you don't have room for those big pianos. So I specifically made a formal living room so that I can tone down the urge to put a piano in a build. So I put a piano in. That room does have quite a bit of red going on in it with the furniture and stuff wise. But the walls, is the walls red? The walls were red, finally. But yeah, there's a lot of red in it. But there is the piano room. It is more formal. It's got a fireplace. Sort of a nicer set. It's the living room that almost never gets used. Basically. And now you are starting to see the beginnings of the living room that gets used a lot. So I definitely wanted to try to go with not so fancy furniture in this room. This is the room where the family chills and hangs out when they have friends over or close family over and things like that, you know. This is a room that maybe everyone just chills out and hangs out, watch movies together and sort of that sort of thing. Like, there's the chances are things are going to be spilt. There's going to be more messes in this room comparatively to some of the other rooms. So I didn't want to put fancy furniture, and it's also back to the point that I had said in part 1, how this family, I'm basically saying, like, you know, they are obviously, they're wealthy, they are a celebrity home technically, but they're not trying to show off their wealth, and they're not necessarily the highest of wealth among the celebrities in the area of where they live. So that is sort of the feel that I've gone for through most of the house, and something I try to keep in mind through building it. But anyway, part 2 should be ending here shortly. I hope that you're enjoying the build so far. If so, hit that lovely like button, subscribe so you don't miss part 3 if you haven't already. Again, I will have the link in the description for all that stuff. My origin stuff and the name of this build will also be down in the description below for a reminder if you need it. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye!